We're here with the Lynch Brothers. Normally when you hear the name Lynch, you think basketball, but each of these four brothers also played Jaguar football. But I want to start with your dad, Jake, longtime Jaguar football coach. Just talk about his involvement with Jaguar football, and obviously it led to each one of you being involved as well.
I can say a couple of things. He actually wrote some memoirs, so I went back and he kept a lot of detailed information in there. And one of the things I thought was pretty cool was he said that he coached sophomore football, and the sophomore football team was the first game of any kind at Jefferson High School, because it would have been football season, probably before classes even started, and so that was the very first game. And again, he kept records, but according to his records, he started off in the first 5 years, 40 wins and 4 losses, and had a 28-game win streak. So pretty good coach.
To me, he was. There were times that closer to the end of his life where, he would be watching. I'd go to his house here in Bloomington, and he'd be watching some college football game that had been played 2 years earlier. He's watching some rerun of it, and it'd be during the basketball season. He almost enjoyed football more than he enjoyed basketball, even though the family's kind of known for basketball, and I get it. But I think at the end of the day, he enjoyed football more than basketball. I don't know.
Of course, the first few years here at Jefferson, he wasn't coaching basketball, so he was a football coach, but he was basically coaching us in youth basketball at that point until he got the assistant job. But I remember as the oldest, this goes back, I know they don't do this anymore, but he and I used to go scouting on Friday nights, so a lot of the games, a lot of the Jefferson games for football, he would not, I don't know how many games he'd see, but, he would scout, and back then they weren't exchanging film or whatever they do now. He'd actually have to go to to the next opponent's football game. So every once in a while he'd drag me along, and it was, fun to be with him and check out, his notes and who they playing next. And Jefferson football initially was, it was really I'm sure it still is, but I haven't seen a game in a few years, but it was a big deal, and was fun to be a part of it as a kid. And I just remember really wanting to play, not only basketball but football once I got to Jefferson, because I was pretty young when the school opened up.
Well, another thing too, that I wore the St. John's hat on purpose. He went to St. John's, played basketball there, obviously, but his freshman year at St. John's was Gallardi's first year as a coach. And so my dad just he knew early, I think, he wanted to be a teacher coach. And so he just jumped on the Gallardi bandwagon early. And so a big influence for him as a coach was Gallardi. So, and my dad, very loyal to Jefferson, loyal to St. John's, and so I think that was a big part of who he was as well.
But Gallardi used to joke with Dad about that he was his first recruit.
Right.
And he would say to our father, Jake, you were my first recruit at St. John's. I remember him saying so.
Yeah, because I think the story was that Gallardi was recruiting one of Dad's high school friends, and Dad was there visiting St. John's for basketball, but Dad overheard Gallardi's pitch to this football player, and so my dad decided to go to St. John's because of it, even though he wasn't going to play football. So then Gallardi always said, "You were my first recruit."
What do you think he took from Coach Gallardi that maybe he applied or kind of emulated his coaching style similar to him?
Well, I guess I think that, I looked at my dad as, he was, he would require that, we put the time in, that type of thing as a coach. Yet he had a good sense of humor, and when it was time to goof around a little bit, he could certainly do that. And so he was, again, he was my dad, but I think for the most part, he related to the kids very well. And, he was a disciplinarian in that, the athletes here at Jefferson wanted to be good and wanted to be pushed. And he was able to do that, as well as, he could joke around with fellow coaches and players when the time came to do that.
Yeah, he was good at I think, as a football coach, at kind of finding that balance between some toughness and some discipline, and knowing the right time to joke around with the players. Him and John Bianchi.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? When it came to sophomore football, I just remember, and my dad's 6'5", Bianchi was what, 4'10" or whatever he was. No, I'm joking. But it was like the difference in height, and then Bianchi was he's always joking around, and they had a great time together. And it seems like, I mean, when I was a sophomore and played sophomore football, we had a really good season, and a big part of that was my dad's kind of being kind of more the straight guy, and John Bianchi being kind of more of the comedian. But it was a good balance of having fun and discipline.
Yeah, so funny, same thing. It's like they were almost opposites,
Yeah.
but they were both really funny. So they would rib each other, and my dad would pat Bianchi on the top of his head, these kind of things. But I remember my sophomore year, we were 8-1, another really good season, and Bianchi promised us that he would tell this dirty joke, but it was going to be at the end of the season. So he did it the last practice of the season. But before he told the joke, he gave my dad like 30 seconds to walk away.
Yeah.
So my dad wouldn't have to listen to it. And so he would be associated with whatever joke Bianchi was going to tell. And so I just have this image of Bianchi telling a joke and watching my dad walking back to the locker room, which was pretty funny.
Well, and of course, obviously Bruno was the first head coach here, Bruno Wallner.
Oh, yeah.
And he and my dad actually met in Laconia. That's where we moved when I was just John and I were just little kids. Slim was born in Laconia. And so that's where they actually met. And Jake was an assistant for Bruno, in Laconia. And then I think Bruno moved to Bloomington a year or two before my dad did. But, so that carried on, and those, Bruno was kind of one of a kind character as well. And, my dad could give it back to him pretty good too. But, it was a fun time to be an athlete, because there was a number of coaches, including this guy over here. I wish Coach Shea would have been coaching football when I was here at Jefferson. But the coaches, and I think the athletes here at Jefferson, great memories of one another, I would say.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because I think, thinking about this is, to me, and probably everybody looks back in their era with some fondness and all this kind of thing, but we had great coaches, and I think almost all of them were teachers in the system. It was just, to me, it was kind of the glory days, what I view of high school sports. And again, it was just because I was a kid and impressionable and all that, but we had so many good coaches in all the different sports, football included.
What are some of your earlier memories of going to Jaguar football games before you were players and watching your dad and some of those Jaguar teams?
Let me tell a story. And it's one of those situations where when I think back to it, you kind of wonder if it's actually a dream. But I'm curious, as you guys are doing this, whether anybody remembers this. It must have been I was probably 7 or 8 years old, so we're talking 75, 76, 77. And I go to a Jefferson football game, I think it was homecoming. And right where the players, I assume they still come into that one gate onto the field, there was an actual Jaguar in a small cage at the football game. So, and I'm curious, as you guys talk to people, especially people from back in the 70s, I'm wondering if anybody remembers that. Like, do you guys remember that?
I kind of remember.
There was a small cage. There must have been some connection to a zoo. You could never do that now. But there was a small cage, and there was an actual Jaguar in the little cage. And I was probably 7, 8 years old. And I thought it was, I'd watched the game a little bit, but I was so young. But there was a Jaguar, a big cat, in this cage, and it was just 1 year that I remember that. And you guys, I don't even think we're playing yet. Maybe Mike, but do you guys remember that?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't.
I'm curious if you guys find it. If anybody remembers that, but
It's funny.
so that's another thing I'll say this about. Before Coach Shea got to Jefferson in 82, 83, just how my memory is, I got these older brothers that are such good athletes, and all of them can jump. And the Jefferson offense, they'd almost never pass. And it was, for basically 4 or 5 seasons, it was Dave Ebner or Rick Ebner right, or Dave Ebner and Rick Ebner left. And they did that, and they would never pass to these guys. And I just like, it was kind of frustrating to watch how their offense was very limited, I thought.
Well, for me, because I was a split end, and Bruno didn't even like me out there to block. So whenever a block was needed, so I guess that would means I didn't play that much. But I always liked the fact, we're down 3 or 4 touchdowns. Now Bruno might throw the ball, and that's kind of how it was. And I remember, I was talking to somebody just a few weeks ago about, and he was about, those cornerbacks back in those days. Because what happened is I played with Rick Ebner, and we would come in for the film session on Saturday mornings, and he was so beat up he could hardly walk, and he's a 17-year-old kid. But after you carry the ball 45 times, and he was the kind of guy that he welcomed the contact. He would run over people. He wouldn't run on him. And I was just, I would come in there and I was just fresh as a daisy because we'd never throw the ball. And it's unfortunate because there were a number of times when Ebner would carry the ball or we'd move the offense down to the 5-yard line. And at that point, all 11 defenders were looking at Ebner. And just split me wide and just let me run at a quarterback, turn around, I'm 6'4" or whatever. Just throw it up there and see what happens. And literally there was one time where Mike Grebin was the quarterback in my senior year. And we used to run plays in occasionally. And I get the play, and of course it's whatever the play was, student body right to Ebner. He was going to run the ball, but I almost said, well, I'm just going to give him another play. It's a play to me. But with my dad's relationship with Bruno, and I don't know, I still think we would have scored a touchdown, but Bruno still would have been, out of his mind, crazy mad at me. But I caved and I gave him the running play, but. It was fun, but yeah, he was a little bit more. It was a little bit more too conservative for my liking back then. So
you were going to audible the play.
I was actually thinking about giving Grebin a passing play to me when Waldner gave me the running play.
That's the thing too.
To Abby.
Well, Grebin was it was going to be a run to Ebner. Yes.
That's my memory.
But the thing of it was that you're 5 yards away from the end zone. Literally all 11 eyes were on him. And if they would have faked the ball to him and just thrown it, right, Coach? It would have been 6 points, or else it would have been incomplete. Just throw it up there and just see what happens.
Just throw it high.
Just see what happens.
These cornerbacks are 5'10". When Coach Shea was with us when I was in high school. Eventually, we started to open it up a little bit and started to pass. And I'm 6'4", 6'5". I can jump. I got a cornerback who's on me who's 5'10". Please just lob it up. I'm going to jump over the guy every single time. And the same thing with these guys. Do the same thing. I just couldn't understand it.
Well, we want to talk about the positives here, but my junior year, Johnny's senior year, we were shut out 4 straight games. And then we finally broke the seal and we beat Lincoln.
So you're sure
we beat them 3-0 to end our scoreless streak. We beat Lincoln and Coach Shea 3-0 for a big victory.
Yeah.
It was a blast. It was Friday night. The one game of
that was a cold night.
It was a real snowy night. Yeah, and we kicked a field goal. I guess probably a 15.
I remember your son
Scott. You brought him down. So yeah, those are some fun memories, though.
Snake wasn't the quarterback, huh?
Well, it's funny because he would actually come in to throw once in a while. Yeah, Todd. His name was Todd Michaels, and we actually got beat. Well, Richfield back then was really strong in football, and we were down to them, and they had to throw. So we had to throw the ball because we had to come back, and so I had a few catches that game. And then it's funny because you bring up Snake or Todd Michaels. We're down in the end zone, and I'm running a crossing pattern, and he throws it right at my feet. And I dove, and I thought I caught it. I remember getting up and I'm looking at the referees that are on the end line, and neither one is sure. They weren't sure if I trapped it or because it wasn't a very good pass, quite honestly, but it was right at my feet. And they called it no catch, and I think we ended up getting beat by Richfield by just a couple. they ended up, I think, in the state championship game or something like that. But yeah, so but you're right. It was Friday nights were fun playing football, and if they were going to throw the ball a little bit, that was all the better. Especially for us guys.
To me, another fun memory was, Mike brought up earlier, Ricky Ebner, David was the same way. Saturday morning for film session, the Ebners were just kind of, they didn't have to go through, we'd go out on the practice field, we'd do some calisthenics, stretch out, run around, and then go and watch film. And David and Ricky were probably never a part of that because they were so beat up. But film session was also kind of an entertaining thing. My junior year, we were playing Minnetonka, and I was on the kickoff return team, and I got pancaked. This guy coming down, and he ended up playing football at the Air Force Academy, 1 year older than me, and was a really good player at Air Force. But I was there to block whoever was catching the pass behind me, and I literally just got flattened. I'm guessing my feet went up in the air. So I'm going in a film session thinking, this is going to be embarrassing. So the kickoff happens, I'm watching and see this big guy running towards me, and luckily the camera just went off the screen just as I was pancaked. So then I didn't suffer the embarrassment that day of watching.
They didn't have the all 22 on the film or something.
So that was kind of fun too.
Yeah.